births. We don't have enough of them anymore. The birth rate across the world is falling. Here in Australia now, 1.5 is the fertility rate. That means for every woman, there are 1.5 children. So, of course, the replacement rate, just to maintain the population as it is 2, because if 2 people are having a child, you need 2 children in order to replace both of them. But we can't make that anymore. It's 1.5 children per woman. I feel sorry for the half a child that keeps being born. Of course, that's not how statistics work. But in the US, it is now 1.6, and that is an historic low. So there was reporting on the weekend that the White House was looking at ways to incentivise people to have more children, and Donald Trump was asked about this yesterday, and he indeed said it sounded like a good idea. It sounds like a good idea to me, was the direct quote. Now, a couple of the ideas that the White House has been looking at is a baby bonus, which of course you will remember John Howard did as Prime Minister and Peter Costello as Treasurer in this country during their term, and that started out as a tax break and then eventually went up to a $5,000 cash-in-hand payment for having a child. And the suggestion in the US is that it would be a $5,000 payment, so that's more like 10,000 Australian dollars. Other ideas is that they would give out Fulbright scholarships to women who are married and have children, and that's a scholarship to go overseas and work overseas and study overseas, etc. The US does that to maintain relations with other nations. There could be other things such as educating women on when they're ovulating so they know when they're more likely to have a child. I suspect the one that would get more people over the line is a baby bonus, because when we did it here in Australia, there was a gradual increase in the fertility rate, and the peak it hit was almost back to the replacement rate. We nearly hit the replacement rate here in Australia, thanks to the baby bonus that was then later dismantled by the Rudd government. So they're saying in the US, what can we possibly do to bring this back? And of course, we know how close Elon Musk has been with Donald Trump. He's one man who's sort of taken things into his own hands. He's got 14 children now by, I think, 7 or 8 women. So he's doing his bit to populate the world, but he has spoken extensively about this before.
The birth rate is very low in almost every country. And it's something, unless that changes, civilization will disappear. America had the lowest birth rate, I believe, ever. That was last year. Places like Korea, the birth rate is 1/3 replacement rate. So that means in 3 generations, Korea will be 3 or 4% of its current size. Humanity is dying. And people, it's just not something we evolved to react to.
Now, it says humanity is dying. That's not entirely true. Sub-Saharan African countries are still having lots of children. But this is part of the problem, is that if you look across the Western world, or not even the Western world, the developed world, where, of course, the pendulum, I think, has swung too far away from the ability to have a family, because the economy doesn't serve the people anymore. The people serve the economy, so people work for much longer, and you have to have both both people in a couple at work in order to sustain themselves, let alone children. So the circumstances in which people feel comfortable to have a child have slowly been slipping away. So governments say, we'll give you an incentive to have a child. And yes, there is evidence that it worked in Australia. But I still think it's a band-aid measure. If you really want people to have children, you have to create a society in which they want to have children. And I think we've done too much to go past that point. I'm not sure we'll ever actually get back to it.
Mark Steyn wrote a brilliant book on this about 15 years ago called America Alone, and then the follow-up After America, arguing that demography is destiny. And if you want to know what the world will be like 50 years from now, we'll just look at who's having children today. And the problem, of course, in the West, as you said, Caleb, is that in Western nations, we're not replacing ourselves. So a baby bonus is a right idea. You have to wonder whether it goes far enough. Nations like Hungary, which we talked about on the program recently, have offered, Liz, I think it's tax-free for the rest of your life to women who have 3 or more children. So there's other things that can be done and levers that can be pulled. But even if nothing is done, just the conversation that creates the message children are welcome and having children is a good thing, not just for yourself but for society at large, is a valuable thing in and of itself. So just for Western nations to be having the conversation, I'm not saying that's all that's needed, but that's a step in the right direction, because so many people having children are demonised because it's inconvenient, it's economically not viable. You're flat out affording ourselves these days without anybody else. The irony is that we're telling women they've got to get back to work to help the economy. But of course, if women are working rather than having children, then ultimately you get economic decline anyway.
Well, I think so much of this has to do with the fact that Western societies stopped celebrating children. If you even watch our advertisements from decades ago, there were families in them. There were kids running around in the backyard. Marriage was either the butt of the joke in the ad. Movies, married people, plenty of kids running around. We see this even in the subliminal messaging all around us on a daily basis. Everything's about singles and potentially looking for love. Women are not finding men who want to get married and who want to have children. You do wonder what has happened to us as a society, because healthy, thriving people naturally want to couple up, naturally want to reproduce. And that has either been beaten out of people ideologically through all sorts of, whether it's radical feminists or guys have been raised to see a family as a noose around their neck. I'll leave that off for as long as I can. Might hit 40, then I'll think about it. At which point all the women in their age bracket are like, well, what are we supposed to do? This is something that I've spoken to so many men and women about. Even the ones who genuinely want to get married, who genuinely want to have a family, they can't find the right person to do it with. And that's where we see countries like Japan starting their own dating apps, because they're another country that has a massive birth deficit. One of the most interesting workshops that I saw when I went to ARC in London earlier this year, big conservative get-together, was this fellow who, sorry, Matt, I don't remember your name, but I do remember your workshop, and I think you'd prefer that anyway. He was specifically talking about the birth rate in Western countries and how every single one of them is a massive dearth. And we can bitch and moan about immigration all we like, but we are not having babies. And until you address that root cause, then nothing's going to change. Particularly, I loved about this idea that the Trump administration is floating, as it includes a national medal of motherhood for women with 6 kids or more. So my mum, you would qualify for this. But this is part of what I'm talking about, where a society that honours motherhood, like that is an incredible achievement. Thank you for doing this. That is wonderful. That is a society that is going to see more of that happening, but we don't do this in the West anymore. The Albanese government, the closest they come to encouraging motherhood is free mother care. We want universal free day care, rather, not mother care. So you can get back to work and work for the man and earn us some more tax dollars, and we, the state, will raise your children for free. If that is your idea of supporting families and women having babies in your nation, you've just signed its death warrant right there and then. It's disgusting.
Well, just before we go to a break, we were talking about Elon Musk, who's doing his best to repopulate the world. He's also going to do his best to get Tesla back on track, telling investors this week that he will start focusing again on his car company, ending most of the work he's doing with the Donald Trump administration, heading up Doge, finding savings in government departments. He said that as of May, he will only do 1 or 2 days a week in the Doge role and focus the rest of his time back on Tesla. This comes after they've released their first quarter trading results, which do not show a pretty picture. There's a lot of red there, including their net income, as you can see, down by 71% in the first quarter of this year. Obviously, there's a lot of things happening here, Caleb. EVs aren't as popular as they were. There's competition from China. Tariffs from the Trump administration, ironically, have affected Musk's company. And also there's been the personal backlash because of his association with Trump. What do you think of this? Can he rescue Tesla? It's still worth $750 billion US, so it's not like the thing is falling apart.
Yeah, I think rescuing it's going to be a task, though. Part of it is, of course, the personal brand of Elon Musk that has hit it in recent times. But the reality is now that anyone who wants an EV already has an EV, and the kind of people who were early into the market bought those Teslas, they've already got their EV. So it's just the rest of the market fiddling around based on subsidies, basically. And those people are buying cheap EVs out of China. They're not buying expensive vehicles like Tesla. So unless Tesla can compete with the Chinese market and produce cheap EVs, I think they've run their race.